All these lies out here. Stop lying. What's up with all these lies? They're on the people lying on the internet, people lying on the news, people lying on social media, people lying on advertisements, people lying in their personal life. Everybody just wants to be a liar now. But let me tell you something about a lie. This is the thing about a lie. If you truly believe that lie wholeheartedly, if you truly believe that lie wholeheartedly, it becomes your truth. I've heard people say all the time, everybody has their own truth. And that's accurate. That's accurate. Everybody has their own truth. But like I said, if that lie is told to you and you believe it wholeheartedly, it becomes the truth. And what happens is pretty soon, everybody that knows the truth has either changed their mind or they're dead. No, everybody believes the lie. And it goes on and on and on. Then you got to tell some more lies to complement that lie to keep the lie going. And I'll tell you, there's been some lies told. I'm not talking about just these political lies and all these other, lies about, what's going on in Hollywood and all that, and then who's doing this and who's doing that. And I'm not talking about those kind of lies. I'm talking about big lies. I'm talking about like the lie that Jesus died on the cross. I'm talking about the lie that the Catholic Church, told about, Christianity to lead the Christians to Rome instead of Jerusalem. I'm talking about the lie that was told about the reasons why, the people, the angels in the Garden of Eden, did the genetic enhancement. They had decided to make a smarter and more intelligent slave. But this is what I'm talking about here. God takes lemons and turns it into lemonade. And it's sweet and it's refreshing. When those angels came down here and did that genetic enhancement and they wanted to have more intelligent slaves, God knew that they were going to do that. But for his purpose, it worked because that genetic enhancement was modern technology, medical marvel, and it catapulted mankind in the evolutionary process to give us the intellect that we possess today. And that's a beautiful thing. And God made sure that happened. When they took Adam's rib and they made a woman, I'm here to tell you, fellas, that woman was the showcase of the universe. Adam, when he came in there, he already was able to produce sperm. The only thing they helped him do was have a little deeper intellect and be able to talk, and speak a language and all that. They had him do all that. That was his genetic enhancement, but they took his rib and built flesh on the rib and changed the DNA and genetic markers to make a person that has less body mass, less muscle mass, less bone density, more estrogen and testosterone. But the main thing is they made a woman that reproduces offspring that reproduce in a perpetual manner for 10,000 years. It's been working. And so that was really the showcase of what they were doing here. And I'll tell you, the story gets deep. They found the Garden of Eden. It's called Göbekli Tepe. And it's in Turkey. Look it up. I don't have all the information. Look it up. It's the Garden of Eden. It looks like this was a huge zoological compound that spread out for miles and miles and miles. And the Bible describes the Garden of Eden. It was a beautiful place. And if you can imagine the finest landscapers in the universe, you've seen some really nice landscaping. I'm talking about the Garden of Eden had the best of everything and everything in there, and it was nice. But it looks like there were different sections because Adam was naming these animals, and they were producing hybrid animals in there. But anyway, look, the whole idea is that God takes lemons and makes this lemonade, and no matter what those fallen angels' intentions were for what they did, it served God's purpose. And that's why I want to say, I don't want to offend anybody when I talk about how the Catholic Church led Christianity to Rome instead of Jerusalem. Now, I don't want to offend anybody when I talk about how the Catholic Church started Islam to have an army to persecute the Christians and turn the Jews and the Muslims against each other. I don't want to offend anybody, but if you look at the cultural history, the writings, the letters from the popes, in the archives of the Vatican, all that information is starting to flow to the top. All that information is becoming available. I don't want to offend anybody when I tell you that picture of white Jesus in all the Christian churches around the world is a picture of Pope Alexander VI's son. His name is Caesar. And Alexander VI commissioned Pablo Picasso and Michelangelo to compete against each other to see who was going to be, to produce the fairest likeness of his son and paint him in the best light. And so that's where that picture came from. I don't want to offend anybody when I tell you that when the Vatican decided to embrace Christianity and control Christianity, they took the statue they had of Jupiter and they called him Peter. And they took the statue they had of Venus and they called her the Virgin Mary. And so I don't want to offend anybody, but all this stuff is coming up now. And I'm sure there's going to be some people, when you find out that this is the truth, there's going to be some people that are upset. They're going to be disappointed. They're going to be hurt because they've been lied to for so long. Jesus is buried in Kashmir. He survived the crucifixion. They said it was a resurrection, so they could explain why he showed up in all these different places, and Doubting Thomas was able to touch him physically and touch his wounds and see that it was him. They can't explain that. So they have to say, though, he rose in a divine, manner and went to these places and preached to these people. These people saw the physical Jesus because Jesus survived the crucifixion. And those Buddhists up there kept that secret for 1,700 years until an explorer figured it out and asked them point blank, is that Jesus in there? And they had to tell the truth. They said yes. And they were going to get a permit to go in there and get a piece of that bone fragment because they know where his mother's buried and they know where his brother's buried. And they were going to compare the DNA to see if that was really him in there. But somebody blocked the permit. Somebody stopped them from going in there. So when you tell a lie, you got to cover up the lies and you got to continue to cover up the lies. But this is all about that prophecy of Malachi, where and the church on the 7 hills is going to burn to the ground. And it may not physically burn to the ground, but they're going to be in ruins. They're going to be in ruins. And I feel bad. I like Pope Francis. He's a good guy. I've heard nothing but good things about him and what he's trying to do and what he's trying to represent. But he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. And day by day, it's getting worse and worse because more of this information is coming out about the whole reason why they whitewashed Jesus, to make sure that when they began the colonization process around the world for the indigenous people, they could go to them and say that this is Jesus and Jesus is God. And this is what he looks like. And that's what we look like. So it just makes sense that we're God's people. So you're a heathen and you're a savage and you need to conform and bow down because this is God. And so that's what, and that's what they did, because all around the world, everybody has that picture of white Jesus in their church. Well, not everybody, but all, it's really popular. So anyway, that was a lie, and the lemon from that lie, God made lemonade. Christians are beautiful people. Christianity blew up all around the world. Christians are faithful and true Christians. I mean, a lot of people say they're Christians, and they're not Christians in their heart. They're just Christians with their mouth. But I'm talking about a really true Christian, Those are good people. And my high priest, my leader in my church, and this is the high priest of all the Jewish churches around the world. This is the Church of God and Saints of Christ. He calls himself a Christian all the time because he talks about how beautiful Christians are, how beautiful their heart is. Their heart is in the right place. And all I'm saying is that when you hear this And when you find out the manipulation and the trickery and the lies and the deceit and the profit and all that, Pope Leo himself said that, what a profit the church has received on the fable of Jesus Christ. They knew they were lying. They knew they were lying. And those are the people that go to hell. When you know you did something wrong and you did it anyway, you knew it was wrong, you did it anyway, you're going to hell. Now, if you didn't know, they got, everybody following this sun god on Sunday, and they decided to change the Sabbath because they decided that they were above the Bible. The Vatican decided that the Pope was above the Bible, and they had the authority to change the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. It says in the Bible, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. That's why he said, remember the Sabbath. Remember which day the Sabbath is on and keep that day holy. It's plain English. Well, now it is. It didn't start out to be English, but it's pretty clear what God meant by that, because he knew that these people were going to do this. And that's why he said, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And so there's just little things along the way that they've done to try to manipulate the program and profit from the lies and trick the people. But like I said, Christians are good people. And when you find out the truth, it's not your fault. And God will hold you faultless. Now unto him that is able to keep you and present you faultless before the presence of his glory. God is going to present you faultless. And even if you, in your heart, believed every word of what they were saying, and you believed that that's what Jesus looked like, and you believed that, Jesus, was being worshiped in the Vatican like he's supposed to be, if you believe that in your heart is in the right place. So all you have to do is understand that if you're following a man that was born in one of the Jewish tribes, the tribe of Judah, and he got the authority from the Jewish God Yahweh to open the covenant to the Gentiles, and so that's all you need to understand, is that's why he was here. And if you're following him, you should follow him to Judaism. You should follow him to the Passover. You should follow him to Rosh Hashanah. You should follow him to Yom Kippur. You should follow him through all the high holy days. You should follow him through all that, because that's what he did when he was here, and that's the way he walked when he was here. And so if you're walking with Jesus, and picture this in your mind, just picture this in your mind for a second. You're walking with Jesus, and you're walking single file, step for step, stride for stride. It's like a military march. Left, right, left. You're stepping everywhere he stepped. The footsteps look the same. That's how identical you want to walk with Jesus. You want your footsteps to be inside his footsteps as you're walking behind him. And he steps in a mud puddle, you should step in that mud puddle too, because you're walking with him and you want to do everything the way he did it so that you can become as close to what he did as you can. You want to walk with him everywhere he went, everything he did, the things he said. Hinge on that. Listen to what he said. Look at where he went. Look at where he was from. He was like that the whole time when he was a little boy. He was brought up into that. That's who he was. He was born into that. He didn't know anything about any Catholicism. He didn't know anything about any Holy Roman Church. He didn't know anything about that. He was into what was going on with Judaism. He was into what was going on with the tribe of Judah, the persecution of his people. It's almost like how Moses felt about his people being persecuted by the Egyptians and the way they were treated. And then Jesus couldn't stand the way that his people were being treated, not only by the Romans, but by the Pharisees too. It was a double manipulation thing going on, and it was crazy. But the message that Jesus Christ had, the one that was distorted, this is the message. Now, if listen to this. This is the message. No matter what you're going through, no matter how tough it is, No matter how bad the suffering is, if you cry out to the Lord, he will answer your prayers and he will deliver you in the last moment. He will deliver you. And that's what happened. He got up on that cross and they crucified him and they thought he was dead, but he wasn't. And God delivered him in the last second. And when he came out of that tomb, everybody knew the message. That's why the Romans hunted down all of those apostles and killed them, because they knew the truth. And the people that were in the community that knew the truth, they either suffered, for knowing the truth, or they pretended like they didn't know. And it was a big secret. And then the Romans imposed things on them like no more circumcisions. You've got to worship on Sunday now. No more Sabbath worship. You got to work on the Sabbath. All that kind of stuff. Because the Catholics have always been arch enemies of the Jews, because the Jews were God's chosen people. And they're upset about that. They're a little butthurt about that. They think the Europeans should be God's chosen people since they're the descendants of these fallen angels. And it just didn't go like that. God chose the Jews. And so I don't want to say that the Jews are better than anybody else, but the Jews were faithful to God. The Jews trusted in God. He made a promise to Abraham that Abraham would be the father of many nations and his seeds would be spread out and all his children would be blessed. And that's exactly what God did, all the way down to Ishmael. Ishmael got a blessing. And it was through some crazy stuff. When I heard this, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had to fact check this stuff. I had to look up as much of it as I could to try to, to find out what they were talking about, where they got this information from. And it was crazy. It's one of the craziest things I've heard since I've been researching spirituality and religion and the history of religion and what happened. And the Catholic Church started Islam. That's what it looks like. The Catholic, and this is, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to offend. The truth is the truth. And I've found out some things that were hard for me to accept, but I had to accept it because it was obvious that the documentation was there and the proof was there. It most likely, and when we think about these things, it's a most likely kind of thing. Nobody knows for sure 110%, if the truth is the truth. But what you do is you put information together and put it together and the other pieces fit in there and it forms a picture. And then pretty soon you've got a high probability rate that this is the way it happened. And it looks like from all the other evidence that it's still perpetuating itself in that same manner. That's when you know that you're really that's pretty close to the truth. You know what I mean? And none of us, unless we were there back then, are going to absolutely with 110% certainty in our hearts, that it's the truth. We can believe it and believe it wholeheartedly, but no one knows for sure unless they were there. But the evidence looks like the reason why they started Islam is because they were trying to persecute the Christians in the Middle East. They were trying to bring Christianity to Rome. And so the people that they were trying to convert in the Middle East to the Roman Catholic Church, they weren't having it. And they were martyring themselves and dying for Jesus Christ. And by the way, his name wasn't Jesus Christ, but we ain't gonna go into all that. Yeshua, we all know, who we're talking about. And I'm sure that he has enough people following him and loving him and believing in him that you can call him Jesus if you want to, as long as you know who you're talking about. Okay, so they were martyring themselves for Jesus Christ. They would kill themselves for Christ rather than, turn to that Roman pagan church. And so after a while, it was a fruitless effort. So they decided to commission a group of soldiers, and there were a group of Arabs in the Middle East, this is before Islam had started, a group of Arabs in the Middle East that despised these Christians. They got along fine with the Jews, but they despised these Christians. And so what they did is they funded them and they fueled these battles. And the deal was, our goal is for you to stamp out all these Christians and take over Jerusalem. And once you take over Jerusalem, then what we're going to do is have you hand Jerusalem over to the Pope. and they agreed. And they went on this campaign, and the campaign was very successful. And as you can see, where Solomon's temple used to sit, there's a big dome there, and it's the second most holiest place in the world to Islam. Okay, that's there now. And when it came time to hand it over to the Pope, the Muslims said, "We ain't handing you over nothing. You know, you're an infidel too. You know, we don't trust you." You know, and so that's another way that the lemons, you know, the Catholic Church is creating these lemons, and now all of a sudden God made lemonade because Islam blew up, and it's all around the world like Christianity. I mean, it's huge, you know, and there are good people, you know, in Islam, and they believe wholeheartedly in what they're doing, and they believe it's all the same basic moral structure with the 10 Commandments and doing right by other people and all that. They're still good people, good in it. So that's another way that God made lemonade out of these lemons, and it continues to happen. Every time somebody does something for their evil purpose, God is going to turn it around. Good will always triumph over evil. So, you know, all these things that I told you that were shocking to me, look them up, check it out, and don't just Google it, and don't just look at a video on YouTube or TikTok or something. Fact check it. Fact check all these things that these people are saying, because like I said, the lies are everywhere, and this is the whole thing. This wraps it up into a nutshell. The devil wants to control the future. If he controls the children, he can control the future, because when he spreads that lie and hooks these kids into this, you know, and nowadays kids want instant gratification. They want something to happen for them right now. Everybody's hungry, you know, to be rich. Everybody's hungry to be famous. Everybody's hungry, you know, to have, you know, all these fancy things. You know, everybody's feeding. Now, that's their God. That's who they're following. That's who they're worshiping. That's what they want to be when they grow up. You know, that's what they want to have. And the devil will offer it to them right away. And it's, you know, whatever they had, the desires of their heart, we all know that God will give you the desires of your heart. But there's a process that you go through to make sure that when you get that desire of your heart, you know, you're worthy of that desire. You know what to do when you get it. And sometimes along the way, your desire may change. It may not be quite the same after you get some God in your heart and you start, you know, looking at things a little different under a different microscope, under a different lens. Your desire of your heart may change, but the devil's going to give it to these kids right away. And what's going to happen is pretty soon, all us people that know that you're just like before, history repeats itself, ain't nothing new under the sun. Just like before, all the people that know the truth are going to pass on, or yeah, they're all going to go. And nobody be left but these children who were taken advantage of in the first place and fed these lies and made to believe these lies. And now they're adults and they're teaching it to their children. And now Satan, the devil, is teaching evil, and evil is perpetuating itself because they're teaching this evil diligently to their children. And so we're the last line of defense. We have to teach our children diligently, and we have to make sure they know who God is, and they have the correct foundation and moral structure, and they're able to defend themselves when they go out there. Their spiritual armor has to be tight. I could go on and on. I know people don't like my long videos, so I'm going to cut it off here and let you know that there's a lot of lies being told out there, but the truth is coming to the surface. What's done in the dark comes to light, and it's all coming to light now. Check it out if you don't believe me.